So Freemasonry, despite what most people think, has been persecuted throughout history. Not only the members of Freemasonry who then sought refuge in the lodges, but Freemasons themselves, because it became very apparent to people for hundreds of years that Freemasons, from its onset, from its beginning onward, was a haven for blasphemers, homosexuals, witches, and people who practice all sorts of ungodly sciences and arts, and it led to atheism and moral relativism and immorality. Moral relativism being the idea that morals are a convenience, and there's a time and place for them, and if it's not convenient, you throw it out the window, to make a long story short. Now, let me read from Wikipedia. It's well researched. I went over their sources, as I always do. They're right on the money. Witchcraft, at the bottom. Suppression of other heresies, witchcraft. The category superstitions includes trials related to witchcraft. The witch hunt in Spain had much less intensity than in other European countries, particularly France, Scotland, and Germany. One remarkable case was that of Logroño, in which the witches of Zugarramurdi in Navarre were persecuted. During the Auto da Fe that took place in Logroño on November 7th and November 8th, 1610, 6 people were burned and another 5 burned in effigy. The role of the Inquisition in cases of witchcraft was much more restricted than is commonly believed. Well after the foundation of the Inquisition, jurisdiction over sorcery and witchcraft remained in secular hands. In general, the Inquisition maintained a skeptical attitude towards cases of witchcraft, considering it a mere superstition without any basis. Alonso de Salazar Frías, who, after the trials of Logroño, took the Edict of Faith to various parts of Navarre, noted in his report to the Suprema that there were neither witches nor bewitched in a village until they were talked and written about. So when you look at it, it was actually the secular people who were more unreasonable during the witch hunts. And that is very important, because people like me tend to be right when we call out witches for who they are. It is these other people who aren't so well rehearsed in religion and the works and truths of God. Therefore, they're shallow. They don't really understand. They lack this depth of understanding that you see with heathens all throughout history. Moving on. When it comes to the most important matters, that is, and especially at least, blasphemy. Included under the rubric of heretical propositions was verbal offenses, from outright blasphemy to questionable statements regarding religious beliefs, from issues of sexual morality to misbehavior of the clergy. Many were brought to trial for affirming that simple fornication, sex between unmarried persons, was not a sin, for putting in doubt different aspects of Christian faith, such as transubstantiation or the virginity of Mary. Also, members of the clergy itself were occasionally accused of heretical propositions. These offenses rarely led to severe penalties. Absolutely fair. So that we've already established that the Inquisition was more fair with witchcraft than secular people were. And that's the main criticism aimed at the Inquisition, that they went on this witch hunt, they didn't know what they were talking about. No, actually, they were the most fair people of all the groups, and there were many, many, many groups, pagan groups, atheist groups, secular groups, many different religions that went on quote-unquote witch hunts. And the Inquisition, to preserve the orthodoxy of Spain, was the most reasonable group. Bigamy. The Inquisition also pursued offenses against morals, at times in open conflict with the jurisdictions of civil tribunals. In particular, there were trials for bigamy, a relatively frequent offense, in a society that only permitted divorce under the most extreme circumstances. In the case of men, the penalty was 5 years' service as an oarsman in a royal gallery, possibly a death sentence, in a royal galley, if you understand the role of the oarsman. It is a possible death sentence. It's a very serious thing to be forced into. Women, too, were accused of bigamy. Also, many cases of solicitation during confession were adjudicated, indicating a strict vigilance over the clergy. So this wasn't some kind of hypocrisy. Another misconception about the Inquisition was this is some kind of hypocritical thing that the clergy did, and they indulged in, in their madness, and they sexually abused women, and they got away with this. You see this time and time again in Hollywood movies. The reality of it was they were more fair than the secular people again. And note what this is all about in the first place. This is about things that go against the morality in the Bible, and it groups together. If there wasn't an alliance before, which I assure you there was, but regardless how you slice it, the resulting alliance was between sodomites or homosexuals, people who do witchcraft, feminists, Freemasons, and people who are criminals. It's basically this, if it didn't exist before, to put it in a way that is acceptable to all audiences, though those of you who have been paying attention know that this wasn't the beginning of this alliance. Freemasonry had recruited spiritual bottom feeders from its onset. But this definitely grouped them together. These people said, oh, these horrible Christians, and we're going to move to America and separation of church and state. Now, what led to the separation of church and state? One of the major things, perhaps the determinant, was the Inquisition. And keep in mind, if you've been paying attention, the people who did the Inquisition were right. They lived in a society with less crime than we have, even though they didn't have a fraction of the technology or the budget for law enforcement that we do. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Use your head. These anti-Christian scum in charge of the government have made a mess of everything on purpose. Now, moving on. Sodomy and rape. The first sodomite was burned by the Inquisition in Valencia in 1572. Take that, motherfucker! Sorry for yelling. And those accused included 19% clergy. Again, the clergy weren't above this. They were weeding out the secret society homosexuals in the church. 6% nobles. The nobles were not above this. The church wasn't part of the elite holding people down. They were going after immorality wherever they could find it, giving people a fair trial. With a fraction of the technology we have today, compare that to the kangaroo court that we have today, the injustice system, the mass incarceration that doesn't accomplish anything because the worst criminals are given free reign over society. Moving on. 37% workers, 19% servants, and 18% soldiers and sailors. You served your country, good for you. You're not above that either. Nearly all, compare that to the psychological operations historically run by the military where they rape. The guy said it. It was fun. I'm going to put that clip at the end, okay? The military guy and his military buddies bragging about how MKUltra was fun, how they were given approval by, quote-unquote, the most highest to rape, steal, and murder. Just like Blackwater, but we won't get into that yet. Nearly all of almost 500 cases of sodomy between persons concern the relationship between an older man and an adolescent, often by coercion. Now, this historically now attaches pedophiles to homosexuals, to Freemasons, to blasphemies, and so on and so blasphemers, and so on and so forth. And it also proves what I've been saying for years, that homosexuals are historically and currently disproportionately pedophiles. You pedophile scum! Fuck you! Fuck you! Anyway, moving on. With only a few cases where the couple was consenting homosexual adults, about 100 of the total involved allegations of child abuse. Adolescents were generally punished more leniently than adults, but only when they were very young, under 12 years of age, or when the case clearly concerned rape. Did they have a chance to avoid punishment altogether? As a rule, the Inquisition condemned to death only those sodomites over the age of 25 years, as about half of those tried were under this age. It explains the relatively small percent of death sentences. So these gays were given more of a fair shake than they deserved. These were pedophiles raping little boys. And the church persecuted us gays. And just like they used the Christianity to justify slavery. Yeah, a bunch of Freemasons in the church use Christianity to justify slavery. What's your fucking point, you sick fuck? Fuck you. Fuck you. Moving on. Freemasonry. Now, like our government, did they leave Freemasonry alone? Or did they do what needed to be done? The Roman Catholic Church has regarded Freemasonry as heretical since about 1738. Isn't that interesting? How that was around 40 years before the Declaration of Independence? I wonder, does that explain why America has a disproportionate amount of Freemasons in it? And why all these things that they persecuted are, ubiquitous in American culture in our country. Okay? The suspicion of Freemasonry was potentially a capital offense, as it should be, you witchcraft-loving, pedophile fucking scum. You little sissy, ninny, homosexual, blasphemer, fucking atheist trash. Now listen to this. Listen to this. I'm right. Listen to this. Okay? Spanish Inquisition records reveal 2 prosecutions in Spain and only a few more throughout the Spanish Empire. These bitches put their tail between their fucking legs, as they always have, and hid like the cowards they are, which they would not be able to do if we brought the Inquisition out back, because these motherfuckers have been bragging, taking pictures and shit for many years now. In 1815, Francisco Javier de Mier y Campillo, the Inquisitor General of the Spanish Inquisition and the Bishop of Almeria, suppressed Freemasonry and denounced the lodges as, now pay close attention, pay attention, societies which led to atheism, to sedition, and to all errors and crimes. He then instituted a purge during which Spaniards could be arrested on the charge of being suspected of Freemasonry. You better believe the Inquisition was correct. And remember, the Catholic Church at one point also expelled the Jesuits. So when you look at the history of the Catholic Church, there has always been this battle, this internal struggle between the forces of evil, these secret society fucking scum, and real Catholics who want nothing to do with them. Absolutely nothing to do with them. And I hope that clarifies for you people that not all Catholics are bad. Some of them wish they had the power to expel all the scum from the church. Freemasons are scum. Blasphemers are scum. Sodomites are scum. Witches are scum. Pedophiles, feminists, scum. And I hope that this has definitively proven to the rational minds watching my video that these people are spiritual bottom feeders, the enemies of humanity and the enemies of God. You cannot be a Christian and be a feminist. That is a fucking contradiction. You cannot be a Christian and be a Freemason. That is a fucking contradiction. Just like I have proven, with my videos that Freemasonry pushes the atheist movement, and there is a rise in atheism in America, which is disproportionately Freemason. That has a disproportionate amount of Freemasons, about 2 million of them, in strategic positions, using atheism to attack Christianity to bring in the Luciferian doctrine. That is why these societies were accused of bringing people toward atheism. That was their plan, to get the atheists to destroy the Christian fundamentalists and to bring in a Luciferian doctrine where organized religion is used as a mechanism of control, not as a mechanism of true enlightenment or true spiritual cultivation, or to bring people to God, to put it simply. Now I hope you all understand why we need to bring the Inquisition back. It is those liars who told history. History is written by the winners, by the Zionists, by the Freemasons, by these ungodly feminists you see on TV and in the media and movies all the time, by a bunch of pedophile elitists. History is written by the alliance of scum who have a chip on their shoulder because they were fucking executed like the dogs they are by the righteous men of history. Thank you.